Fellas, with how bad the cards have been recently, we're in need of a good card, and UFC 314 is that card. It's probably the most stacked card we've had this year, like the only stacked card we've had as well. 311 was good, but all the fights fell out last minute. 314 was whatever. UFC 314, this is by far the most stacked card we've had this year, so obviously we're going to be breaking down and predicting every single fight on this card. Starting off with Nora Cornolle versus Hailey Cowan. Bit of a low-level women MMA fight. I'm going to go Nora Cornolle to win this one by decision. I think she dominates this unanimous decision. She's pretty good on the feet, is Nora Cornolle. She lost a competitive fight with Cavalcanti, who's now doing well in the division, and apart from that, she's had some good wins like Melissa Mullins, who's now on a, well, just got a really good win in the UFC as well. Hailey Cowan, I mean, I don't really know if she's UFC worthy. She could even make weight last time out when she fought Jamie Lynn Hoff. She got beaten pretty comfortably in that fight. It was a bit of a boring fight too, seemed like a glorified sparring session, so I'm going to go Nora Cornolle to win this one by decision. I think she's a much better striker than Hailey Cowan. I'm not really sure Hailey Cowan's UFC worthy. I'm picking Nora Cornolle to win this one by a pretty comfortable unanimous decision. Picks her apart on the feet. I could see maybe Hailey Cowan having success in the pocket and maybe trying to take the fight to them out, but it isn't like Cornolle is necessarily a bad grappler. So I'm going to go Nora Cornolle to win this one, and I'm going to say she gets it done by decision. Now, the keys to victory for both of these women, for Nora Cornolle, it's to put the pressure on early, throw some heavy shots. I think trying to have a sparring match with Hailey Cowan is only going to play into her game. You want to be throwing the heavy shots, dealing damage, and keep her on the back foot, take control. Don't let Hailey Cowan take control. She's not UFC worthy. Force her into your type of fight. And for Hailey Cowan, it's to implement the grappling early on. Her best chance of winning this fight is to grapple, so she has to implement it early on, as she showed in the regional scene. Stick and move, don't try and engage in a fight, and try and prioritize output and volume like she tried to do against Jamie Lynn Hoff, even though it didn't really work. So I'm going to go Nora Cornolle to win this one by decision, but yeah, those are the keys to victories. Then we've got a pretty good fight in the, I think, the featherweight division. Darren Elkins versus Julian Erosa, two veterans going out there, two veterans that usually scrap. Yeah, this is going to be a really good fight because every single time both of these guys go out there, it tends to be a really good scrap, and they've got a very similar style, where they've got this kind of scrappy style on the feet, where they engage in dogfights all the time. They just throw it down without any precautions, and they're also got really good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well to top it off. But I reckon this is going to be a scrap, potential fight in the night for the prelims. I know there's going to be a ton of fights on this card that you can give bonuses to, but this could be potentially be one of them for the prelims. Elkins versus Julian Erosa. In terms of who I'm picking to win, it's another tough one to predict, but I'm going to go with Julian Erosa to win this one by decision. Like I said, they're both very similar fighters. Scrappy guys on the feet, kind of, you know, grimy with the way that they fight. Really good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I just feel like Julian Erosa's closer to his prime. Not saying that Darren Elkins is washed up after his last couple of performances, anything but that, but I just think Julian Erosa, I mean, he's been fighting the better guys than Darren Elkins. He's been looking sharp recently. I'd say he's the better striker too than Darren Elkins. I don't see there being much grappling in that fight. And Darren Elkins kind of excels when he's facing other heavy grapplers, like when he fought Daniel Pineda, because when Pineda couldn't get the submissions, Darren Elkins was just roughing him up, whereas I feel like Julian Erosa, we're going to see Julian Erosa keep this fight standing, pick him, not necessarily pick him apart, like I said, it's going to be a scrap, and I think it could be a fight of the night because they both have a very good style, but I'm leaning towards Julian Erosa. Another really close fight. Darren Elkins could definitely get it done. He could grit down and use his veteran experience to get it done like he has in his last two, but I'm going to lean towards Julian Erosa to get this one done. And you look at who he's lost to recently. Alex Caceres, borderline top 20 in the featherweight division. Chris Padilla just beat Jai Herbert, so I'm going Julian Erosa by decision. The keys to victory for Darren Elkins, it's to dogfight. Force him into a scrap and a dogfight. That tends to be where Darren Elkins does his best. And take the fight to the mat and look to submit and deal damage. That is the style of Darren Elkins. To keep it grimy and scrappy on the feet, take the fight to the mat, and then deal even more damage. To do his nickname, his damage, and he does live up to the nickname. And then for Julian Erosa, it's to piece him up on the feet. I do think Erosa's the better striker. Mixed it with the grappling, with a submission threat, with the striking, see what could obviously keep Darren Elkins guessing, and just outdog him. I know that's a hard thing to do when you're facing Darren Elkins, but either way, I think it's going to be a really fun scrap. It's going to be a really good fight, potential fight of the night on this fight, but I'm going to lean towards Julian Erosa getting the job done. Then we have Sumudaerji versus Mitch Raposo. Sumudaerji, he's a very big dude for the flyweight division. I think he's like 5'10" or 5'11", which is huge for a flyweight. I think he's the second tallest on the roster in that division. Anyway, I'm going to be picking him to win this one by decision over Mitch Raposo. I feel like Mitch Raposo, it's quite an overrated dude, or at least was an overrated dude in the flyweight division, and he's going to be taking on Sumudaerji, who's known for his power, hits very, very hard, nearly drops every single one of his opponents. Even in his losses, he's usually dropping opponents and making it super competitive, just arguably beat Charles Johnson. Mitch Raposo, I feel like he's massively overrated. He came into the UFC with a ton of hype, but he lost in the contender series to Jake Hadley, where it was just him circling Nocturne all over again. He looks very, very hittable. He's kind of got a pressure boxing style that he mixes up with his wrestling, but it never really seems to work. It's kind of just him circling Nocturne and getting getting tagged apart. So I'm going to go with Sumudaerji, who's having competitive fights with the likes of Matt Schnell. That was a sick fight. Charles Johnson beat Adeshev and finished Malcolm Gordon as well, a dangerous flyweight to beat Mitch Raposo. Sumudaerji, definitely a top 20 flyweight in the world. Hasn't really been going his way, but he's been having competitive fights against way better flyweights than Mitch Raposo. And even though Mitch Raposo didn't look awful against Andre Lima, he was outclassed. He was overhyped. And to be honest, I'm not even sure he's UFC worthy. He's kind of like a hype job from the regional scene. I think Sumudaerji, despite being quite big for the division, and he should probably move up to bantamweight, I think it'd benefit him. I'm still going to pick him to beat Mitch Raposo by decision. Keys to victories for Sumudaerji: pick him apart on the feet and threaten him with your power like you do in nearly every single one of your fights. He's got crazy power for flyweight, so pick him apart on the feet and try and clip him when he comes into range. Mitch Raposo is very predictable when he comes into range. He kind of just goes with a double jab, very predictable, not much head movement. So I think if Sumudaerji can kind of try and clip him when he comes in, that's his best opportunity. And for Mitch Raposo, stay cautious of the power of Sumudaerji, goes without saying. Close the range and box up close. He has got a good boxing base, does Mitch Raposo, and do threaten the grappling because he is a wrestler. He comes from a wrestling background, so a bit of wrestling and boxing from Mitch Raposo, avoiding the power, I think will be the best key to victory for Mitch Raposo. Then we've got Tresean Gore versus Shooter boxers Marco Tulio. It's either going to be Tresean Gore winning this one by grappling because he's a bit of an athletic freak when it comes to grappling, or it's going to be Marco Tulio by some sort of TKO using his heavy Muay Thai heavy style. It is quite a good fight though. They've both come off really good performances. Marco Tulio won in the Contender Series, won against Iho Portieri, and obviously Tresean Gore is on a 2-fight finishing streak now with 2 guillotines in very quick amount of times. A tough one to predict, but I am going to go with Marco Tulio to win this one by TKO in the second round. Then I hope it doesn't get fraud checked by Tresean Gore of all people, but I'm going to go Marco Tulio. You know, he's training at Shooter box with the likes of Charles Oliveira, and you can kind of tell he's got that very Shooter boxer style, heavy Muay Thai base, really good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's shown it on the regional scene in his transition to the UFC. Just got a really good finish over Iho Portieri in his most recent fight where he dropped him early on and then went for a pretty brutal follow-up finish. So Marco Tulio does look very, very promising for this division. And Tresean Gore, he's a bit of a power freak. He's kind of one of these heavy-handed wrestlers for the middleweight division, but he's also very, like, he's not good on the feet. He got finished by Cody Brundage pretty brutally. Lost, I think it was on the Ultimate Fighter or the Contender Series to Brian Battle. Again, not a bad loss, but you look at who he's beat. Josh Fremd, he's not even in the UFC anymore. Antonio Ciccoli, the dude, I think he's just been cut from the UFC. Marco Tulio's way better on the feet than Tresean Gore, and I think if it does get to the mat, I'd favour Tresean Gore with the wrestling, but the jiu-jitsu of Marco Tulio has shown to be pretty solid as well, and he's quite a crafty striker too. 2 good finishes, well, a good finish in the Contender Series and the UFC. I'm going to go Marco Tulio by TKO in the second. Keys to victories for Tresean Gore is to use the explosive striking to set up the takedowns, because I think going to the mat would be the best advantage. Stay cautious with the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu of Marco Tulio. He's not just a Muay Thai merchant, and look to wrestle and ground and pound. That is the best opportunity, in my opinion, of winning for Tresean Gore. Mixing it with the wrestling, using the explosive striking to set up the takedowns, and be aware of the submission. And for Marco Tulio, it's to make sure your takedown defense is on point. I mean, it goes without saying when you're facing Tresean Gore, who's this big, powerful middleweight. Look for submissions when he does initiate the grappling, and obviously look out for the guillotine that he tends to throw. But just pick him apart with Muay Thai. Much better striker. He's looked really good with his Muay Thai so far in the Contender Series and the UFC, and I feel like he's going to have not much of a difficult task beating Antonio Ciccoli with the grappling. So, not Antonio, I keep saying Antonio Ciccoli, with Tresean Gore with the striking, sorry. So, just pick him apart on the feet with the Muay Thai. I think that is Marco Tulio's best opportunity. Then we have Sedriques Dumas versus Michal Oleksiejzuck. I'm going to go with Michal to win this one by TKO in the third. Initially, I was going to go with Sedriques Dumas, and now that I've been thinking about this fight, I'm going to switch my pick to Michal. I think Michal was supposed to be cut from the UFC. I swear after he lost to Sharon Magomedov, he got cut from the UFC, and now he's back. So the UFC have given him another opportunity, but look at the people that Michal has been facing. Sharon Magomedov, Kevin Holland, Michelle Pereira, Caio Brello. This dude's been facing nothing but killers, and yes, he's been falling short, but I mean, he dropped Kevin Holland when they fought. He was able to drop Kevin Holland. He made it fairly competitive against Sharon Magomedov, and you look at Sedriques Dumas. Yes, he's got a decent striking base, but I feel like I feel like he's at heart quite a chaotic striker who tries to be technical, but technique goes out the window. He kind of always engages in a brawl. He got finished by Ruziboyev, I think, last year, and I'm not saying that that's a shameful thing to happen, but, you know, he's been chinned before in the UFC. He also got beaten by Josh Fremd. I just don't see Sedriques Dumas becoming a top middleweight, and we've seen Michal face these tough guys before, and he's going to be hungrier than ever as Michal. You know, he knows this is his last opportunity competitive for a UFC contract. If he loses this one, he's definitely going to be cut from the organization, and he's had that experience against these much better guys in the middleweight division. Like I said, he made it competitive with Shan Magomedov. He dropped Kevin Holland until he ran into an armbar. His only other losses have been Caio Bravo and Michel Pereira recently, so I'm going to go with Michal to win this one by TKO in the 3rd round. Earlier on in his UFC career, he was quite a dangerous prospect. Very powerful dude on the feet. I mean, that win a couple of years ago over Chidi Njokuani has aged quite well now that Njokuani's on a 3-fight winning streak, so I'm going to go Michal Oleksiejzuck to win this one by TKO in the 3rd round. I can see him clipping Sedriques Dumas when Dumas gets a little bit too comfortable. And it isn't even like Sedriques beating anybody good. Otman Azatar, I think he's been cut from the UFC. Dennis Tulio, I think he's been cut from the UFC. Cody Brundage, one of the lower level middleweights on the roster. So I'm going to go with Michal to clip him in the 3rd round. Maybe take a round where he kind of, you know, feels Sedriques out, but eventually goes into a fight. And he's a much more dangerous dude than Sedriques. So I'm picking Michal to win this one by TKO in the 3rd round. Keys to victories for Sedriques Dumas. It's to keep it technical and don't engage in a brawl. You don't really want to be brawling with Michal unless you're known for your KO power, which Sedriques doesn't have. And just watch out for the grappling. He does have a good grappling base, does Michal. He isn't really a heavy grappler, but he does have it. He showed against Shan Magomedov, so watch out for the grappling and just keep it technical. For Michal, it's to fight him like he owes you money. This is your last opportunity at a UFC contract and staying in the UFC. You need to fight him and force him into a dogfight, a fun fight where he can get a finish. Like that dude owes you money, which, I mean, based on off his criminal record, he probably does. And mix it up with the grappling. You want to give yourself every chance of winning. You have got a decent grappling base, unlike Sedriques Dumas. So do try and mix up with the grappling. I think that would be the keys to victory for both of these men. And then we've got the old veteran of the lightweight division against the young gun. Chase Hooper seems to be on an absolute roll of beating these veterans of the 155 division. From Clay Guida to Jim Miller is crazy. We have Jim Miller versus Chase Hooper. I mean, you've got Jim Miller, who's had 56 pro fights at 41 years old, against Chase Hooper, who's had 18 pro fights at 16 years old. So the contrast between the two of them in terms of like age is crazy, but they've actually got quite a similar kind of style in the sense that they want to take the fight to the mat. And obviously I am going to be going with Chase Hooper to win this one by decision. I don't see him getting a finish though over Jim Miller. I can't see this fight ending in a finish really. Chase Hooper's a monster of a grappler. I know he took a couple of losses early on in his UFC career, but he's now on a 4-fight win streak and he's an absolute beast of a grappler. He's had some really good performance recently. That one over Borshev where he dominated Borshev and obviously just submitted Clay Guida, but I don't see him submitting Jim Miller. Obviously it goes without saying Jim Miller has, I mean, he's been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the UFC for the longest time. He's had submissions throughout the years. He's fought so many different grapplers. Jim Miller's seen everything, man. This isn't going to be surprising for him what Chase Hooper brings. I do believe that at this moment in time, with the age and everything going on, Chase Hooper's the better grappler. I see him kind of beating Jim Miller comfortably with the grappling, but I don't see him finding a submission, even though he is a big submission threat, because at the end of the day, it's Jim fucking Miller. You know, this dude's been, this dude's been breathing nothing but BJJ for the past 20 years. This dude's been in the UFC, fought so many different grapplers, so I think the experience of Jim Miller will ride him out, but unfortunately, I think on this fight, he will be outclassed, and Chase Hooper will pick up a decision. But hopefully after this fight, we can see Chase Hooper get a bit of a step up in competition, because Clay Guida to Jim Miller, I know Jim Miller's not looking bad. He seems to be actually a bit of a finishing machine, but you want to think about a step up in competition against maybe some younger guys after this for Chase Hooper. Anyway, keys to victory for Jim Miller. It's to pressure Chase Hooper with that pressure boxing style. If anybody's going to get flatlined in this fight, it is going to be Chase Hooper. Force him into a dogfight, preferably a boxing fight. You don't want to be grappling and, rolling around with Chase Hooper. You want to be keeping the fight standing and preferably having a boxing fight. Jim Miller's a better boxer than Chase Hooper. It was only a few fights ago when Chase Hooper got battered by Steve Garcia. And avoid grappling. Be careful on the ground. Usually I would advocate Jim Miller to implement the grappling, but when he's facing Chase Hooper, that's probably the last thing you want to be doing. So keep it a bit of a pressure boxing style. And I don't need to tell Jim Miller to have a good takedown defense. He's at the end of his UFC career. He already has that takedown defense. So for Chase Hooper, it's to set up grappling exchanges. Simple, plain and simple. Miller's seen everything already. You can't just shoot takedowns blindly. You're going to have to be creative with the way that you set up takedowns when you're facing a guy like Jim Miller. And watch out for his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu when implementing grappling. This isn't fucking Jordan Levitt. This isn't, this isn't Borshev. You can't just run into takedowns and initiate grappling without any caution. This is Jim Miller. The guy's a legitimate Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. We just submitted Damon Jackson. He's got some good submissions on his name throughout his UFC career. So you're going to have to be cautious when implementing the grappling. But I am going to go with Chase Hooper to win this one, and I'm going to say he gets it done by comfortably winning with the grappling, not getting a submission, but winning the decision with the grappling. But it should be quite a fun grappling fight, and obviously the young gun versus the old veteran. Then we've got potentially a #1 contender fight where the winner might take on Zhang Weili, as Xionan takes on Virna Jandiroba in what is probably going to be a #1 contender fight for the women's strawweight division. Another really tough one to go with, and a tough one to pick, because I've kind of been going back and forth on my pick between this fight. It's a tough one to pick, and you'll see as the card goes on from now, and not a lot of these fights are 50-50, but I'm going to go with Virna Jandiroba by submission in the third round. I mean, 21-3 for a women MMA fight is impressive, and she's been in a roll as Virna Jandiroba, and I feel like Xionan, yes, she has got, I mean, yes, she is pretty well-rounded for the division, but she seems to get put in bad grappling exchanges every time she faces a grappler. In the last fight against Zhang Weili, she was submitted by Zhang Weili in the first round. If the bell didn't go, I mean, if the bell had literally 2 more seconds, she would have been out cold, so in my eyes, she got submitted in that fight. Even when she faced Mackenzie Dern put her in so many bad positions with the grappling, so it isn't like she's got this elite takedown defense. And Virna Jandiroba is probably the best submission artist in this division right now. Maybe not the best grappler. I know we've got Tatiana Suarez and Zhang Weili, but as far as submission ability goes, she's probably the best in this division right now. She's been in a roll. She just submitted Lemos in the first round, so I'm going to go with Virna Jandiroba to submit Xionan in the feet in the third round. I can see Xionan winning the first couple of rounds on the feet. She's definitely the better striker, definitely the more dangerous striker than Virna Jandiroba, and she's just overall more well-rounded. But I think the grappling of Virna Jandiroba, I mean, she's been preparing for Tatiana Suarez. I think she's going to take Xionan down, implement the grappling, and eventually within the fight, preferably towards the end of the fight, I reckon she's going to pull off a submission against Xionan and submit her, because I've just not been really a massive fan of the fact that Xionan keeps getting put in these grappling exchanges in nearly every fight. The keys to victory for these women, for Xionan, it's to output and volume strike. She's a better striker than Virna Jandiroba, but output and volume strike like you just did against Tabitha Ricci is your best opportunity. Keep Raul on the back foot. You don't want to, you don't want her to be on the front foot where she's pressuring you against the cage. You want to keep her on the back foot and tag and move heavy game plan. You don't want to look to get a brutal finish. Tag and move. Avoid the grappling of Virna Jandiroba. Keep the fight standing and just pick her apart on the feet. Just pick her apart on the feet as Ribas was able to do a couple of fights ago. And for Virna Jandiroba, it's to pressure Jan as much as possible. You want to be pressuring her as much as you possibly can, keeping her on the edge of the cage. Clinch, grapple as much as possible. I mean, you know the game plan by now. The game plan of Virna Jandiroba will be to grapple, so clinch and grapple as much as possible, and a submission-heavy game plan. Best submission artist in the division. Look for the submission. Goes without saying. Close fight. Number 1 contender fight. I think Virna Jandiroba is going to submit Xionan in the third round and then potentially get a fight with Zhang Weili straight after that. Then we've got Dan Ige versus Sean Woodson. Jeez Louise, the height difference between the two of these guys are going to be crazy. I think Dan Ige must be like 5'10", and Sean Woodson's like 6'2" for the featherweight division. He's so lanky. Anyway, I'm going to be going with Dan Ige to get this one done by decision. Yeah, I think Dan Ige is a much better fighter than Sean Woodson. I mean, Sean Woodson is coming off a good win over Padilla, but to be fair, he did kind of get that robbery win over Alex Caceres a couple of fights ago where I thought Caceres should have won. Now, it is going to be tricky for Dan Ige because, like I said, Sean Woodson is huge for the division. He's tall, lanky, and long. No one in this division really has the frame of Sean Woodson, so I can see him giving Dan Ige problems from just the height and the reach difference alone, and the fact that he is a pretty technical boxer. But I feel like Dan Ige is just, from a technical perspective, everything into account, is not only a more dangerous striker, but I just think he's a better striker. I can see him, outboxing Sean Woodson, getting up on the inside, landing those combinations, potentially showing a KO threat, which he does in nearly every single one of his fights, and the wrestling too. I think Dan Ige is a much better wrestler than Sean Woodson. I think Dan Ige, as he has in his past couple of fights, is going to show a wrestle-heavy game plan in this fight with Sean Woodson. He's going to come up with a boxing, pressure with the boxing, shoot a takedown, have some control time with the grappling. I don't think he finds a submission over Sean Woodson, but I just think he's a better fighter. The only real way I see Sean Woodson winning this fight is if his range is that significant to the point where he can just tag Dan Ige consistently. You look at who Dan Ige is losing to. Diego Lopes fighting for a belt. Leroy Murphy on a roll. Bryce Mitchell, one of the best grapplers in this division. Finished Landway, knocked out Andre Philly. So I think Dan Ige from a danger perspective is better. From a technical perspective is better. From a grappling perspective is better. From an experience perspective is better. The only way I'd give Sean Woodson this fight is from the range. But I'm going to go Dan Ige by decision. I think it's the more confident pick. The keys to victory for Dan Ige, it's to pressure Woodson and get on the inside. You don't want to be having a technical, rangy fight with a guy like Woodson. Get on the inside, hit him, clip him with the boxing combinations, try to look for the chin, mix with the boxing in with the wrestling. Dan Ige's got really good jiu-jitsu and his wrestling's underrated too, so you want to be mixing them between each other to make them both effective, and just make it a dogfight. Make it a scrap. Don't be technical with him like Alex Caceres did. Make it a dogfight, scrap with him. I think that's Dan Ige's best chance. And for Sean Woodson, it's to keep the fight at kickboxing range. Like I said about a million times already, he has so much range over Dan Ige, so keep it at a kickboxing range where you're using those kicks. Don't brawl with Dan Ige because the dude is like a truck. You're probably going to get chinned if he can reach you. and just pick him apart. Oblique kicks all day, baby. Throwing those oblique kicks for Dan Ige, keeping him at range, keeping him at bay, and then just picking him apart on the feet would be the best game plan for Sean Woodson, which he's been able to do. It's a good fight, but I'm going to lean towards Dan Ige getting this done. I think he's more dangerous, and like I said, I just think he's better everywhere the fight goes. Bit of a big step up as well for Sean Woodson to go from Padilla to Dan Ige, so I'm going to go Ige by decision. Then we've got the main card opener of Nikita Krylov and Dominick Reyes. Another really tough one to pick, man, but I'm going to go with Dominick Reyes to win this one by decision. I'm not sure what the betting odds are for this fight. I think Nikita Krylov might be a slight favourite, but I'm going to go with Dominick Reyes to win this one. First reason, Nikita Krylov's been out for like 2 years now. He's on a 3-fight winning streak, but he hasn't fought since, I think, early 2023. The last time this dude fought was on that Yan and Marab card. To put things into perspective, he's been fighting wars in Ukraine. He's been going out there and having his villain arc, and he's coming back to the UFC. And I just don't know how I expected to come back after he's, you know, getting up there in age and is quite inactive. And Dominick Reyes is a better striker than Nikita Krylov. Maybe he's not more dangerous and maybe he's a lot more vulnerable. But from just a kickboxing perspective, I actually think Dominick Reyes is one of the best kickboxers in this division. That might be a bit of a crazy take, but you look at Dominick Reyes on his run up to the Jones fight and even just in all of his fights, from a technical perspective, he actually is a pretty solid kickboxer. The only issue is his chin. He's been chinned and it's no surprise that he has got a bit of a dodgy chin. He got chinned by Blachowicz, Prohaska, Span, and he's been able to survive his last 2 fights, but Nikita Krylov does hit pretty hard. The last time we saw Nikita Krylov against one of these older kind of borderline washed light heavyweights was when he faced Alexander Gustafsson and fucking brutalized him, so I could see Nikita Krylov landing on the chin of Dominick Reyes. And even then, he's got a grappling threat. And I'm also, you look at Dominick Reyes and who he's beaten. Dustin Jacoby's quite a good win. Anthony Smith, not so much. He kind of just was a punching bag in that fight, but I think Dominick Reyes seemed to be a much more smarter fighter this time around. He's probably growing in confidence. Nikita Krylov has been out for 3 years. I'm going to go with Dominick Reyes to win the decision. Just picks apart Nikita Krylov on the feet, outpoints him, does the better with the kickboxing, avoids danger from Nikita Krylov. I know it's easy said than done when you're fucking Dominick Reyes, who's got one of the worst chins in this organization, but how long is this chin kind of conversation going to go on for? I'm going to go with Dominick Reyes to win this one by decision, and I hope he does win this one by decision because Dominick Reyes in top 5 contention in 2025 would be fucking mental. Keys to victory for Nikita Krylov, it's to pressure Reyes and box like he did with Alexander Gustafsson. He has got pretty heavy hands, does Nikita Krylov. Not one of the best strikers in the division, but he has got heavy hands and he's got decent boxing, and that's your best opportunity of cracking the chin of Reyes and mixed to striking it with the grappling. Nikita Krylov's one of the best grapplers in the light heavyweight division, apart from maybe Magomed Ankalaev. I'd actually say he's probably the second best right now, so you've got to mix it up with the grappling. You want to give yourself the best opportunity. You want to give Dominick Reyes the most things to think about. And for Reyes, it's to stay cautious on the feet as you need to do in every single one of his fights. Keep it in a kickboxing match where you can kind of pick him apart, use your body kicks at range, and stay at your range and be prepared for takedowns. He's a good rangy dude for the division. He's quite big for the division. He's Dominick Reyes, long, rangy, and it's worked in his last 2 fights. So stay at kickboxing range, try and pick apart Nikita Krylov, but do be prepared for the takedown entries from Nikita Krylov in this fight. But I'm going to go with Dominick Reyes by decision. Then we've got Patricio Pitbull coming over to the UFC to take on Yair Rodriguez. Potentially, I'm not going to say #1 contender fight, but definitely a fight between 2 of the top contenders of the featherweight division. I'm going to go with Yair Rodriguez by decision. This could be a Michael Chandler situation where Patricio Pitbull has a huge UFC debut and gets right into contendership, but listen, I know Pitbull's a dangerous dude. He's one of the most talented dudes in this division, and he has been for the past couple of years. He's been one of the biggest stars outside the UFC, and he does hit like an absolute truck, but Pitbull, he is out of his prime. This dude's been out of his prime for like a good 5 years now. This isn't prime Pitbull, and he's coming over to the big leagues against Yair Rodriguez, who's by far one of the best kickboxers in this division. I know he's taken a couple of losses against the elite fighters, but by far one of the best strikers in this division, and he's shown it. He's made it competitive. I mean, in that fight with Volkanovski, he was able to land on Volkanovski a few times with those kicks in just before he got finished in. Went 5 rounds with Max Holloway, brutalized Josh Emmett on the feet. Yair Rodriguez, you can call him one-dimensional, you can call him inconsistent, but he's a very good, I mean, not very good, he's one of the best kickboxers in this division. I just don't know how Patricio Pitbull's going to look, not only being out of his prime, but coming over to the UFC, the big leagues for the first time. I'm going to go with Yair Rodriguez to win this one by decision. I think it is going to be a competitive fight. I can see Patricio Pitbull doing better with the boxing, pressuring Yair Rodriguez, shooting a couple of takedowns, making it a dogfight, but I'm going to go with Yair Rodriguez to win. Much better kickboxer, not much better, but I think he's a better kickboxer. Again, it's hard to kind of predict these fights when we've not seen Pitbull in the UFC yet, and he is out of his prime, but I'm leaning towards Rodriguez by decision, outpoints Patricio Pitbull and gets the decision win. Now, the keys to victory for both of these guys, for Yair, it's to picking him apart with kickboxing on the feet as you do in every single one of your fights, and that's your game plan in every single one of your fights anyway. It's to keep him at kickboxing range. Don't brawl with him because he hits getting hard, does Pitbull, so don't be in a boxing brawl, and do prepare for takedowns. It's no surprise that Yair Rodriguez is one of the more one-dimensional dudes in this division, and he's facing a guy with pretty solid fight IQ in Pitbull, so do prepare for the takedowns to come. It's not just going to be a pure striking match, but for Pitbull, it's to get up. Listen, you've got to get up close as soon as possible and box. You don't want to be in a rangy fight with Yair Rodriguez. The size difference between the two of them is quite big too, so you want to get in the close the distance and box with Yair Rodriguez, giving yourself the best opportunity. Mix up the grappling. Yair Rodriguez, his wrestling sucks. He's got a similar kind of style to Cyril Gane, where his wrestling, his pure wrestling is awful. He's got decent Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He has got a couple of submissions here and there, but pure wrestling is awful. So I feel like that's the best opportunity for Pitbull. And just to simply fucking sleep him. You're a powerful dude. You're known for your power. Coming over to the UFC against Yair Rodriguez, just put the dude to sleep. That's the keys to victory for Yair Rodriguez and Patricio Pitbull. Potential people's main event. Bryce Mitchell versus Gene Silva. This is another really tough fight to pick. This is genuinely 50-50 in my eyes, because on one end, you've got Bryce Mitchell. Very kind of one-dimensional, very good grappler, but I would say he's top 5 best grapplers in this division, and he's shown it on multiple different occasions. His wrestling is legit. You take away the personality, you take away everything. Bryce Mitchell is one of the best in this division when it comes to wrestling. Against Gene Silva, this new fighting nerd prodigy, who's just been fucking running through people. Insane striking, his accuracy is amazing, hits like a truck, an absolute dog. It's a tough fight to pick, man. I've been going back and forth on my pick for this fight as well. It's a tough one to call for, but I'm going to go with Gene Silva by TKO in the second round. I am slightly leaning towards Gene Silva. Now, I understand there's a bit of worry going into this fight, and people keep bringing up the Charles Jourdain fight with Gene Silva, where Charles Jourdain, this one-dimensional striker, was able to take down Gene Silva. First of all, I think Charles Jourdain's grappling's underrated, and second of all, you can use the excuse that he wasn't really expecting grappling from Charles Jourdain, who's predominantly a one-dimensional striker, and he was able to immediately get back up when he was taken down by Charles Jourdain, and he's one of the most brutal kind of strikers in this division of Gene Silva. Definitely top 15 worthy. I don't know how he's not in the rankings yet. But I just think the accuracy of Gene Silva, the run that he's been on, he just did. Melzik Baghdasaryan's a pretty fucking solid kickboxer. The dude just brutalized him in that fight too. Out-dogged Drew Dober, got the finish with the cut. Knocked out Charles Jourdain, knocked out Weston Wilson. He's got technique. He's got accuracy. He's got danger. He's training at the fighting nerds, which does seem to be pretty fucking unstoppable. Where I assume that he's heavily working on his takedown defense as well. So I'm going to go Gene Silva to win this one by TKO in the second round. I can see Bryce Mitchell definitely having success with the grappling early on. Maybe not getting a finish over Gene Silva, but definitely having success. But at some point in the fight, Gene Silva just lands on Bryce Mitchell, clips him on the feet, drops him, and then goes for a bit of a brutal ground and pound finish. So it is going to be a close fight. It's probably the people's main event for this card because of the build-up that they've had. But I'm leaning towards Gene Silva to get the TKO in the second round. Now, the keys to victory for both of these men, for Bryce Mitchell, it's to stay defensively sound. You don't want to get Josh Emmett again, because if he takes another loss like I did to Josh Emmett, that's probably done for another 3 years. So stay defensively sound when you're facing a powerhouse like Gene Silva. Grapple heavy game plan, goes without saying, that's his normal game plan. And just pressure Silva and watch for the knees coming up. But Gene Silva has got pretty decent takedown defense, even though he hasn't really faced any heavy grapplers. He's shown in training, he's shown in his early UFC career on the regional scene that he just like to throw those knees coming up when people are going for the takedown. So be careful when shooting a takedown, but you want to keep him on his back foot. You don't want to be in the middle having a rangy fight with Gene Silva. And for Gene Silva, it's just to beat the crap out of him on the feet. The striking differential between the two of them is the same as the grappling differential between the two of them. It's not even close. Beat the crap out of him on the feet. Stay weird. Gene Silva has got a bit of a weird style where he kind of has a low output style, and then he'll just fight in bursts where he'll just fucking mortal. He's like brutalize people on the feet. So stay weird, and also keep Bryce Mitchell at range on the back foot. You want to keep him at range. You want to keep him on the back foot. You don't want to be getting pressured against the cage by Bryce Mitchell, because the chances are he's going to back you up, but he's going to manage to engage in a grappling exchange and take you down. So keep him at range. Keep him on the back foot. Give him something to think about. But that would be the keys to victory for both of them. But I'm leaning towards Gene Silva to win this one by TKO in the second round. And then we've got the co-main event. Michael Chandler taking on Paddy Pimblett. If you'd have told me or any MMA fan 2 years ago that Paddy Pimblett was going to be taking on Michael Chandler in a co-main event, nobody would have believed you. You know, when Paddy Pimblett was debuting against Vargas and Michael Chandler was fighting for a belt, not a single soul on the planet would have believed that. But here we are in the co-main event now. This fight is going to go one of two ways in my opinion, and it's not even just my opinion. Most MMA fans would conclude that it's either going to be Michael Chandler clipping Paddy Pimblett, knocking him out cold with the kind of explosive style that he has, or it's going to be Paddy Pimblett at some point in the fight initiating the grappling and getting a submission win over Michael Chandler just like he did to Bobby Green. 100% is going to be one of those two. Now, I've been saying leading up to this fight that I'm leaning towards Michael Chandler. I think Michael Chandler is way too big of a step of a Pimblett, blah, 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 but as fight week's been getting closer and the fight night's been getting closer, my confidence in Paddy Pimblett has been growing. You know, the way that he's talking, you know, the new training that he's had, the fight with Bobby Green, and the fact that he has massively improved since the Jared Gordon fight in every sense. But I'm going to go to my original pick. I'm going to go with Michael Chandler by KO in the first round. When I say KO in the first round, again, that's not me disrespecting Pimblett, saying that he shouldn't be in there with him. But I just think if Chandler is going to win, it's going to be by him landing some big fucking shot on the feet in the first round, clipping the chin of Paddy Pimblett and knocking him out cold. And you look at the losses. People like to talk about Chandler's record, but he's been facing nothing but elite fighters. Gaethje, Oliveira, and Poirier, all top 5 guys in the lightweight division. And he's come close to finishing all of them. Some of them have gone to a fight of the night in his decision, and the other wins have been a knockout one of a Dan Hooker and brutalizing Tony Ferguson in better fashion than Paddy Pimblett. He just fought Charles Oliveira, and even though there was about 50 back of the headshots and he definitely lost that fight, you know, you saw the danger of Michael Chandler, where he was able to clip Charles Oliveira and go for that ground and pound finish. We know Paddy Pimblett's quite hittable on the feet. Obviously, he's definitely sorted out his defense situation since the Jared Gordon fight. He's not as chinnable on the feet. He doesn't leave his chin as wide up in the air as he used to do, but he's still quite hittable. And I just think Paddy Pimblett, you look at his fights, you know, Tony Ferguson, later on in that fight with Tony Ferguson, he looked gassed out, and Ferguson had success in the third round. The fight with Jared Gordon, he got beat by Jared Gordon. So as good as Paddy Pimblett has looked, and as much as I kind of want him to win for the sake of the division, I see Michael Chandler getting this one done. I see this kind of being a people forget man moment where Michael Chandler shows us who he is again. Because if he's having these competitive fights against these top fighters, it is a big step up for Paddy Pimblett to go from Bobby Green to Michael Chandler. Unless Paddy Pimblett can keep him at range with the kicks and eventually initiate a grappling exchange and Michael Chandler kind of fight IQs himself into a submission, I'm going to go with Michael Chandler at some point in that first round to clip Paddy Pimblett on the chin and get the knockout in the first round. The keys to victory for both of these guys, for Michael Chandler, it's to brawl, as it is in every single one of his fights. Usually, I wouldn't really be advising Michael Chandler to brawl, but in this case, I would be advising him to brawl. Close the distance, get in boxing range, can brawl with him. Avoid clinching and wrestling. Paddy Pimblett's got a fucking mean clinch. Avoid the clinch at all costs and batter him with your explosive boxing. Michael Chandler loves to do one thing, and it is brawl. It doesn't work in your favor when you're facing Oliveira or Gaethje or even like a Poirier, but you're facing fucking Paddy Pimblett. Brawling, having that boxing heavy game plan is probably the best opportunity for Michael Chandler at this case. And for Paddy Pimblett, it's to keep it at range with kicks. Paddy Pimblett does have good kicks at range. He showed it against Bobby Green. He's shown it in a lot of his fights now. He does have good rangy kicks. He's quite big for the division. And I think if you are going to strike with Michael Chandler, that's your best chance. Try and clinch him and take him to the mat for the submission. Paddy Pimblett, like I said, has a really good clinch. He's got good judo, good trips. So you want to be clinching with Michael Chandler. I know it's hard when the dude's just an absolute ball of muscle for the division. It's not easy to just trip him like you do with the likes of Jordan Levitt, but you do want to look for the submission and take it to the mat. And if anything, don't brawl with him. Don't be in a dogfight with Michael Chandler like you have been before, because you're going to end up getting chinned. So, yeah, Michael Chandler. If there was a fight where we're going to see Paddy Pimblett's chin get cracked, it's going to be this fight. But I'm going to go Michael Chandler to win this one by KO in the first. Close fight, 50-50. I'm just leaning towards Michael Chandler. And then we've got the main event. Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes. You know one thing I love about this title fight? Is that it's a win-win either way. No matter who wins this title fight, I'm going to be, you know, kind of gutted for the person who loses, but at least whoever's going to be the featherweight champion, it's going to be either Diego Lopes or Volkanovski. One of those guys is the featherweight champion in 2025. You cannot complain. It's another 50-50 fight. This card is so hard to predict because on one end you've got Diego Lopes, who's a complete powerhouse, one of the most dangerous up-and-comers in this division. You know, known for his KO power on the feet, elite Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's just dangerous everywhere the fight goes, against Alexander Volkanovski, who for the past couple of years, like the past 5 years specifically, has just been dominating the featherweight division against top elite featherweights like Yair Rodriguez and Max Holloway. But he has been out for quite some time now, and in the last 2 fights, he's been chinned in both of them, and he's definitely more vulnerable, and he's getting up there in age. Prime Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes, I probably would have confidently said Alexander Volkanovski, but current Volk versus Lopes, again, we have no idea how current Volkanovski is going to look. Is he going to look better than he did against Topuria? Is he going to look worse? Who fucking knows? And how is Diego Lopes going to look when he faces a top fighter? There's so many questions that are going to be answered in this fight, but my pick is going to be Alexander Volkanovski and new to reclaim his featherweight gold and beat Diego Lopes by decision. I'm going to go with Alexander Volkanovski to win this fight. And I say this because we have seen Diego Lopes look beatable in the UFC. For example, his fight against Dan Ige. When Dan Ige fought him on short notice, in that third round, Diego Lopes definitely looked a bit worn out. And Dan Ige won that third round against Diego Lopes pretty comfortably. Maybe that was just Diego Lopes trying to ride out and get the decision, win over a dangerous guy in Ige. But we saw that happen. Even in the Contender Series, he fought Joanderson Brito, and looked pretty beatable. I mean, he got beat by Anderson Brito too, so it isn't like Diego Lopes is this unstoppable machine who can't be stopped, and it's going to be taking on Alexander Volkanovski, who's one of the highest level dudes in the featherweight division. If you take away Ilia Topuria, who's just on a completely different level, Volkanovski's been dominating and playing with his food for the past couple of years in the featherweight division. I understand this isn't prime Alexander Volkanovski. We're not going to see him 50-45 Diego Lopes, or maybe we will, who knows, but I'm picking the guy who's been dominating the featherweight division for the past few years. I'm picking the guy who 50-45'd Max fucking Holloway. I'm picking the guy who finished Yair Rodriguez and arguably beat Islam Makhachev the first time around. I know he's vulnerable. I know he's coming off a few losses, but I'm going to go with Alexander Volkanovski and new against Diego Lopes. But again, it's another dangerous matchup for Volkanovski, where he has to deal with the early onslaught of Diego Lopes. But it should be a fun fight. It should be a pretty technical approach from Volkanovski if he doesn't want to get chinned. But I'm going with Volkanovski and new to be a champion in 2025. Anyway, keys to victory for both of these guys. From Volkanovski, don't engage in a firefight. Please, for the love of God, Volkanovski, do not get chinned again for a third consecutive time, because at that point, it's retirement only. Keep the fight as technical as possible. From a technique perspective, it's no surprise that Volkanovski is way better than Diego Lopes. Let's keep it technical and just try and survive the first two. Easy said than done, but I think Volk should be able to do it. Survive the first two, and then it's fair game. I don't really trust the gas tank of Diego Lopes. I don't know how well his style kind of favors a 5-round matchup, so survive the first two and then it's fair game. And for Diego Lopes, it's to heavy pressure Volkanovski. You know, pressure him against the cage. It worked for Topuria with that chaotic style and force him into a firefight. You're not going to beat Volkanovski in a technical matchup. Avoid a chest fight, force a firefight, and do mix it with the grappling at times now. I know it's going to be difficult to grapple with Alexander Volkanovski when you know, when he's shown that he's got amazing takedown defense before, like when he fought Makhachev. But, you know, you just want to keep him guessing, give him another thing to think about. And you never know, if you are able to take Volkanovski down, that's a whole new world that he has to deal with. So that will be the keys to victory for both of them. And then for the parlay, not necessarily a parlay, but my picks. I've ranked every single one of my picks on this card by high confidence being, you know, I'm extremely confident. Medium confidence being, I'm kind of confident in this pick. And then low confidence, which was kind of, it's a 50-50 fight. I've just gone with this way. So my high confidence picks are Chase Hooper by decision, Marco Tulio by TKO, Sumudaerji, Julian Erosa, and Nora Cornolle by decision. Those are my high confidence picks. I'm comfortable with them. Medium confidence is going to be Yair Rodriguez, Danny Gay, and initially it said Sedriques Dumas, but I'm now changing that to Michal. So Michal is now my medium confidence picks. And then my low confidence picks tends to be half the fucking card. Alexander Volkanovski is a low confidence pick. Same for Michael Chandler. Same for Gene Silva, Dominick, Reyes, and Virna Jandiroba. But those are my picks for UFC 314. I can't wait for this card this week. And one of the most stacked cards we've had in a while. And definitely the most stacked card of 2025. Let me know your thoughts on this card if you agree or disagree with the predictions. Thank you for watching.